Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting episode of Two Men in Black and White, an honest conversation. And we are joined once again by special guest Hervé Francois, my partner in crime, Brock and Ellis, here with us. And I am Mark Hayes, your man in the middle. All right, let's talk about it. Brock, the three factors we track on a regular basis that drive us absolutely nuts: leadership, action, and messaging. How are we doing? Have we moved up the scorecard at all? Because we were giving out some D's, some incompletes, some F's. I mean, we were all over the board.
Okay, we've definitely had some action, but I want to hand that ball to Hervé first because we're talking to Mark. We've been talking on these topics every day, and I kind of want to hear, since it's been about 30 days since Hervé was on the show, and I want to get a sense of Hervé. What is your current feeling from the left, the beloved anti-Trump 2.0 MAGA movement, about the leadership? Do you have a sense that leadership has emerged on the left, and who would you deem that person or people to be?
So, Brock, Mark, first of all, thank you again for having me on. It's always a pleasure. Great seeing you guys. Love the work that you guys are doing. Always having to push through this message in turbulent, difficult times, right? We just cannot have our voice silenced, and we cannot get quiet as a mouse on the messaging, right?
Ooh.
Because so much going on and there's so much to talk about. It's a great question to lead with, Brock. And I would say, what's probably the biggest change within the past 30 days since I was last on your show from a leadership perspective on the left. You can argue from 30 days, has leadership on the left has gotten better or it's gotten worse? I would say it has gotten worse. And the reason why is because of what happened within the past couple of weeks. You all know what I'm talking about. Our lovely Senator Chuck Schumer caving in, right? And caving in to go ahead and go along with the Republicans to make sure that this budget was passed to keep the government running. You can make an argument that to support Senator Schumer in order for him to have taken the position he did to side with Republicans to keep the government running. And of course, you could take a position against him and say, hey, listen, you know what? It's us versus them. No, wow, I can't believe that you possibly did this, and so on and so forth. I think at the end of the day, when you see how the chips has fallen off of his decision, and when I say from a leadership perspective, I'm not saying that Chuck Schumer was, in the eyes of people on the left, the de facto leader of the Democratic Party, but he certainly has a very loud voice and a big presence for as long as his tenureship has been in power as minority leader, right? Or not minority leader, but obviously a very senior leader in the Democratic Party, right? And I think you saw a lot of the fallout that took place once he agreed to side with the Republicans. I think he felt that if the government had shut down, that the Democrats would have been blamed, that we would have been viewed as, the crying child, and we're not going to go ahead and agree and do the best for the people, which would have been ultimately to go ahead and side with the Republicans to go ahead and pass this budget. Obviously, folks on the left are still very salty, still very disappointed and agitated about the outcomes of the election.
Do you
Go
think
ahead.
Schumer, quote, recovers from this, or do
No,
you think
no,
he
no.
just stays reeling and he's kind of gets pushed aside?
Well, here's a great question, and I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to go there as a segue. The segue is, one of the things that I had said the last time I was on your guys' show when you said, Hervé, how do you think this thing plays out? And I think my response is things are going to have to blow up. Things are going to have to blow up. We're going to have to see some real difficult times, right? I think this is an example of it, right? Not a major blow up, not a difficult time, but I mean, in regards to leadership, listen, before Chuck Schumer had made his decision, the Democratic Party was in dire need and in search of leadership, right? We talked about kind of wish that Kamala was still
Yeah.
there, even after she lost and so on and so forth. She seemed to has, to fade away and everything else like that. So now, even more so, with the decision that Chuck Schumer made, well, with this budget proposal, people are arguing, and I agree with them, that the Democratic Party is in dire need of leadership. The good thing, if anything happens from this, from what Chuck Schumer did, right, is from the ashes things need to burn down. When things burn down, you have ashes, and from the ashes, that's when things arise. Okay,
So the phoenix rising.
the phoenix rising from the ashes, but we needed to have things burn down. And this is a microcosm. This is an example of something burning down. For anyone who might have had a last bit of hope that maybe Chuck Schumer is going to lead us out of this mess, that ain't going to happen. If there
No.
was any percent of hope that was going to happen, that's not
Right.
going to happen. So now, if the void was 90%, the void is now 100%, right?
Right.
And who steps in? And you can argue it's for the taking. Reading an article today, some interesting names being floated out there. Gavin Newsom starting his podcast, inviting conservatives on. Okay, thumbs up, thumbs down. Next, Governor Wes Moore of Maryland, which I'm a big fan of. I've met him. I've heard him speak at several occasions at different conferences. I think he checks a lot of the boxes. He's still very young. Nothing wrong with that. Some people already, trying to compare him to a young senator, former Senator Barack Obama. We'll see. But he's had a lot of great accomplishments and so on and so
Sure.
forth.
Sure.
All that being said, we're talking about people that are not in DC. These are people
Right.
that are their own governors of their own states and so on and so forth.
Where are you on the where do you stand on the Bernie and AOC running around doing
Barnyard
town halls?
I think it's great that they're doing town halls. I think the town halls have to continue because the message has to continue. I think the great thing about the town halls, the town halls are at its best when they become two-way conversations between a congressperson and their constituents. So the constituents can hear the complaints, the real-time, two-day complaints that's bothering them. For all the mishmash that's taking place in the media, people still got bills to pay, still
No.
got to send their kids to college, healthcare costs, and everything else like that.
So the crowds don't impress you because we've been moved by the crowds with Bernie and AOC. They have really moved us.
Yeah, I'm very happy of what they're doing. I hope that they continue to do it. I think when you go ahead and you compare the 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 feedback that they're getting from their constituents versus the feedback that constituents of Republican congressmen, once they go back home, right, and they have their little town hall meetings, you see how upset already, just 2.5 months in, how upset already allowed. What the heck is going on with this Elon Musk guy? Da, 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 da. And I'm like, hold on, time out. You don't get really the right to complain. Okay,
Right.
this vote that you made in November, it doesn't come with a refund receipt. Okay, it's caveat emptor. You don't bought it, now you got to wear it, right? You don't get to go back to the dealership and return it and say, "Oh, I bought a lemon." No, that's what you voted for. That's what you have to deal with. All that being said, I'm glad that AOC and Bernie are doing the town halls that they're doing. I think they need to have it. I think it's a little different than the original question that you're asking in regards to leadership for the Democratic Party. I like Bernie's voice and AOC's voice within the Democratic Party, but I don't think that they are leaders of the Democratic Party, if you will. But I like
Oh,
their voice. I
Interesting.
wouldn't want
Okay.
them. I wouldn't want them to be silenced. I want them to continue talking. But
Okay.
in regards to leaders that can fill that void for the Democratic Party, no, I don't think they are that. But I have no problem whatsoever if folks want to, en masse, in big numbers, truly want to start following AOC and Bernie Sanders. Like I said before, the leadership seat truly is there for the taking. And I think people are truly itching and scratching for new blood and perhaps even young blood. We need to flip it around. We got to turn this.
So Hervé, you've given us some interesting food for thought, I'll
Mhm.
say. Uh,
Good, good. That's what I'm here for.
yeah, because
Good.
we thought that just those two, their voices, their messaging, their passion, was kind of moving them out in front of some of the everybody except Jasmine Crockett. Now, so we're looking for those because what people are hearing at those town halls is we want somebody to fight for us. Who's going to stand up
Yeah,
and,
100%.
and match their machete knife
I would
with
100%.
your machete knife, right? Stop
100%.
bringing the butter knife to the machete fight, right?
100%. Yep.
So that's why we felt so moved by them. So if you're not sold on Bernie and AOC, how does one usurp them as the de facto leader of the party? Now I see you threw out Gavin Newsom. We wrote him off when he tried to normalize MAGA, and he had Charlie Kirk on there, and then was it Steve Bannon, Brock?
Steve
Yeah,
Bannon.
Bannon. Yeah,
Bannon.
Bannon.
Yeah,
Yes.
that
Yes.
that to me,
Some consultant told him he had to move to the right,
right.
and
Yeah.
he
He's doing that.
misunderstood the message.
He was way right. He was going way right.
He took a hard right when it was like he was supposed to veer to the right. And I
Exactly.
get it. I get it. He probably thinks, oh, I'm a California governor, and I'm going to be pinned as a lefty, so I got to try to tack to the middle if I'm going to be a presidential candidate, which he's been thinking about probably since he was about 14 years old. And I just
Right.
think that he doesn't have the right instincts. So I don't think. Yeah, I think Newsom blew himself up right in that moment. But okay, but you still have Newsom in the mix and Westmore in the mix. We've talked Pritzker. Pritzker's making a lot of noise. He made another good
They talk
speech
about
the other day too. I don't love Pritzker, but he keeps making good speeches.
yeah.
He got
I
out and
love
actually defended trans people.
right.
He's willing to say it when others are running away from it.
But Brock, we love rich guys who love democracy, right? And that's JB Pritzker. And JB Pritzker's done a hell of a job in Illinois.
Yeah.
You're hard pressed to find people to say a negative word from it, especially from our side of the camp. Um,
I
so so
also
but
Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania, and Ruben Gallego of
Gallego, yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Now we haven't heard much from Mr. Gallego, and
No,
we've been wondering
that's
where
right.
he is.
That's
And
right.
now that Phoenix came alive when Bernie and AOC were there, maybe he'll, jump on this train,
Being golden.
especially with what's happening to the Hispanic community. Now you got these Venezuelans and Cubans uh, being forcibly removed from the country. You would think that somebody from the Hispanic side of the aisle is going to step out and say, "Wait a minute. You lied to these people. You lied to my countrymen. You lied to the brown folks around the country, and now you want to send them off to be tortured in El Salvador because you think they might be gang members." One guy was a professional soccer player. I can't wait for that crap to hit the fan. But let's talk about some of the other emerging names because you mentioned Gavin Newsom. I still like Pete Buttigieg. Brock is not a big fan, but I love Mark Cuban. What say you on Mark Cuban?
No, no, Mark, I don't. Again, remember, there's having a voice and there's being a leader, right?
Okay.
I don't mind Mark Cuban's voice, just like I don't mind AOC or Bernie's voice. AOC and Bernie, they've been in there for a minute right now. Bernie even longer, right? So you kind of know what they're gonna say. And support it. They fight to fight. At least a good thing with them is that they're very consistent in their beliefs. They toe the line. They're consistent in their messaging and so on and so forth. That, at the very beginning, only 20 people are listening to them, and now millions might be listening to them, is a good thing, right? So I like that. I think AOC has matured over the years as a congresswoman, which you only expect to have happened, right? She was very young when she got in, right? She was previously a bartender, and so on and so forth, right? So she's learned the ropes. She's learned from Schumer. She's learned from Nancy Pelosi. But nevertheless, she hasn't gravitated towards that, a little bit more towards the middle. AOC is still who she is, right? From day one. She's, I think, a little bit more calculated in her messaging, and as well as the discussions that she has with people, that they can be a little bit more accepted. So I want AOC and Bernie to continue being vocal. Mark Cuban, not necessarily. I don't think Mark Cuban would be a good leader. Again, a good voice, but a good leader. I mean, you think about how some people could have been. And listen, guys, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page, because when you say the word leader, I'm talking about someone who could potentially run for president in 2028 for the
Right.
Democratic Party. Because right
Yeah,
now,
but we're also talking about someone that can unify people, right? That's the difference between having a voice is a leader
right,
unifies people and,
right,
hopefully leads a movement,
right,
right? They
right,
become bigger
right,
than themselves and make it into a
100%.
movement. It is two different things. Some people are just really
Yes.
smart and good at messaging and
Right.
I've always loved Elizabeth Warren, right? But
Yeah.
she wasn't, necessarily, she's not the greatest leader, but she's a great
People,
Message.
legislator,
people, people
right?
like
And
people like
thinker and
Elizabeth Warren, Mark Cuban. I can see them on a cabinet, having a
yeah, yeah. Okay, so
position.
Westmore has and there's a charisma that the leader
Right,
could
right.
or should have,
Very
like the
good.
great ones have, like
That's
even Bill Clinton had, right? Probably
exactly.
what Hillary didn't really have. Um, Kamala has it, right?
Absolutely, absolutely,
That's
absolutely.
why I'm a little surprised that she's continued to opt out because I would think that in her head that she hasn't given up on running again and saying, look, I was never given a full chance. I did a 100-day scramble and look how close I got. And maybe I won and I got screwed and votes were changed. That she wouldn't want to, she's still young, that she might want to take want one more bite at the apple. But I keep arguing, Hervé, if she doesn't come out and be a voice now,
Right.
spring of 2025, you can't just
And
come
then
back into the game later. Like,
I
these are the hard days. These are the days where your voice is more important than ever.
I agree, and not only from a timing perspective, earlier is better than later, but also if she comes out tomorrow, right, and she decides she's going to be that voice. My $1 million question is, Kamala, what is your messaging going to be? Because now you're going to be put in a position that you haven't been put in before, right? You didn't hear about Kamala. I mean, you heard about her when she was Senator of California in Congress and she was on different committees and everything else like that, right? Then she went ahead and she ran in 2020 against Joe Biden, and we all know, she didn't make it there, right? But we heard her messaging, right? A little more to the left. And then last summer, as we know, she was just kind of thrown into the fray once President Biden had decided to step down. I think if she decides to come out, and I agree with you, Brock, that it would have to be earlier versus the spring of 2027 or stuff like that. If she decides to come out now,
Yeah.
today, tomorrow, next month, I would love I would love for her to have a more comprehensive message today versus what she had last summer when she came out and when she ran her campaign.
Yeah, yeah,
Short 3 months.
yeah,
Okay,
Right.
it
Let's
has
talk.
to be different. She
yeah.
can't come out tomorrow, next month, with the same messaging she had when she ran her campaign
Yeah.
last summer. Won't
Right.
work.
And you can't come out and say, I told you so. Right? Because
No,
that's not going to resonate either.
it's hard to say, but you can't. You have to say
Right? It
it's
makes sense, but you
right.
A,
can't
a
say
little
that
bit of
it
that,
doesn't help
a little
anybody.
bit of that will creep in no matter what.
So easy
It'll
to
be
say.
impossible not to have it slip out every so often.
So easy to say.
Okay. All
Easy.
right. Okay. So that's interesting on your, so, not as bullish on AOC, certainly as Mark is Mark. I was going to hit you with today that I thought we took a little bit of a step backwards on the left relative to the message, in that I saw a whole article, and it gets back to Elisa Slotkin doing the rebuttal to the
Mhm.
State of the Union. A
Right.
very middle of the road. I was in the CIA. I'm from the Midwest. I'm white, and I'm going to give like a middle of the road ish, make everybody comfortable sort of counterattack. She
Right.
said one sentence about immigrants, right? But then
Right.
she couldn't say that, like, God forbid you mention immigration policy or say that actually immigration is good for America, right? No one's allowed to say that, right? So I saw a thing with Jason Crow, who's the congressman out of Colorado, who's kind of leading up a group that's trying to win back the House, and it's all about the Democrats that won, where they have to win where Trump won, right, to win back the House. Like there's 13 seats they're talking about, but it's all about, oh, we need a message of what does he need? What does the Democratic message need to be?
Both.
Economics. Economics,
Yeah.
kitchen table. All we can talk about is economics. So
Right.
it's that I think that that of course is learning the exact wrong message. That
Right.
I'm like when you have the best economy in the history of the country, the lowest unemployment, the biggest, expenditure in the history with the infrastructure plan, and you have a president who's literally walking the picket lines with the unions and hands over to Kamala and has that record behind the Democrats and they still don't win. I think the lesson learned is wow, you can't just talk economics.
Right.
Clearly, people vote on something other than economics, that social issues come into play, and don't be afraid to fight culture wars against MAGA. But what Jason Crow's message is, that's not what the Democrats want to do. They want to get back to just talking about economics because, quote, that's what everyone talks around the kitchen table, and that's the winning message. And that's what's good about the Bernie AOC message. It's all economics, anti-oligarch. But are we really not going to talk about the fact that it's a white supremacy movement, and that we need to confront a fucking white supremacy movement that's taking away pro-choice, that's just terrorizing the LGBTQ community, and as Hervé warned us, we're in autocracies that's just pulling people out of their houses in the dark of night and shipping them off to parts unknown like autocracies do. Okay.
Tell me this, Brock. When your white friends, you go out to dinner, you get together for a gathering, are they talking about the white supremacy movement or are they saying Trump's just a mess? Like,
Trump's
we
just a
know
mess.
Trump's a
Yeah.
mess.
Yeah. No one's talking about the way. No one talks about it in polite company. No one
Why?
talks about it. No one wants to
Why?
like lay that
You're
out there and like argue that point. Like it's almost like a watering down very often of how extremely horrendous things are and how like Nazi-ish level shit, DEFCON 5. I just don't think white, it gets back to that same thing. And I'll
Right.
get a good Sunday afternoon. I'm having to watch some NCAA tournament with friends from her high school crew. And
Right.
I'm going to push the issue and ask the questions because it's going to be a great round table of white men
Right.
in their mid to late 50s.
Yeah. And
And
I'm doing the same thing.
find out where they stand, but those aren't the things people talk about over dinner in polite company unless there's
But see,
white people
now
aren't talking about it. That's why
that's
white people
the
aren't on the
difference.
streets, because they're not riled up enough about it yet.
That's the difference, Hervé. And back me. I've been black for a long time. But so back me up on this. Right, right. So at dinner conversations, right, kids and all, Brock, we will talk about what is going on in with this racial division because we need our children to understand how deeply embedded it is in our society. And if we want our children to do better and not use that or something they've heard out among their friends as an excuse, we need to coach them through how to deal with, how to act in corporate America, right? How to carry yourself, how to look a man in the eye and shake hands, right? How to speak the king's English properly. It's funny too because oh gosh, the gentleman from the Cosby Show who married the daughter. And he was in the military. I can't think of his name right now, but he was real tall. He married oh gosh, why can't I think of it?
Lisa Bonet?
Character.
Yes, married Lisa Bonet,
Yeah.
and on the show,
Yeah.
and he wrote a book. I actually in Randall. I forget Randall's last
I know
name.
exactly what you're talking about, but go ahead.
He wrote a book
Okay.
talking about how he was teased relentlessly as a kid because he spoke proper English.
Yeah.
Right? You sound white.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I got
So
that too.
we have to deal with. We have to talk about these things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And now, Hervé, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think white America has to talk about these things now. Because if you don't, we're just going to repeat the cycle again.
Mark, there's no, and Brock, there's no doubt the issue needs to be discussed. But here is, and here's, and then, and Brock might have a statement on this. Here's where I think it might be a difficult issue to talk about amongst white people, especially those that don't consider themselves racist at all. They play down the middle. They believe everyone should have an equal shot at education and jobs and healthcare and so on and so forth. I don't want this to come across the wrong way, and I say this up front because I don't know if it is or
Don't worry about it. We can take it.
Well, no, I'm not worried. Not to you guys, but anyway, it's that, you know, there a lot of white folks living today. They obviously were not around somewhere, right, in regards to the 60s. Mark, when we talk about, right, when there were, civil rights movement and everything else like that, how folks were getting hosed down, folks, segregation at its height. Next, Jim Crow laws come through, and we're still not being treated as equal and everything else like that. If you fast forward 50 to 60 years, a lot of white people and a lot of black people would tell you that there has been progress on the racial front in this country.
Sure.
And there has
Sure.
been, right? There has been some progress, a good amount of progress and everything else like that. So if now being 2025 and you turn around and you say to folks, hey, our current president is a white supremacist, or he has white supremacist type thoughts in the laws that he wants to push through, wanting to get rid of DEI initiatives and making it difficult for LGBTQ and so on and so on and everything else like that. I think a lot of people have a hard time attaching themselves or attaching white supremacy from back then, 50s and 60s, to how Trump is running his presidency today. They don't view it as equal. They view it as, okay, yeah, this is an old white guy in his 70s. He's been around white folks his whole life. He's privileged, everything given to him, grew up wealthy, and so on and so forth. He's doing not only, he's not only not doing for people of color in this country, black folks, brown folks, but he's not doing anything for the lower middle class in this country. Everything this guy is doing is strictly for the billionaires. It's probably something a little bit new in this second go round of his presidency.
Yeah.
That
Thank
is
God.
That's all it is.
Right.
Mark, I'm like, thank God.
Billionaires.
I think it's the greatest blessing. The greatest blessing of Trump 2.0 is that it's been so indiscriminate that it's been impacting white people, and that's why you have those town halls of angry white people, like screaming and yelling because they're getting screwed for the first time in their lives, and they're not used to getting screwed.
Right, and the thing is, so here's where I disagree with myself in regards to when you say AOC and Bernie, they're just talking economic policy, and I say that they should also talk social policy. Those folks that are yelling and screaming at these town halls, low and middle income class people, they're not hollering and screaming about social issues, right? Where before that's what they took to the polls back in November.
Yeah, you're right.
Not yelling about immigration now. Now, hey, this shit's expensive out here.
Yeah. You're gonna take my Medicaid, or I got fired. I got fired.
I had my nice federal job. I was about to get pension. Now I'm not getting no pension. I got to be a billionaire to afford a fucking omelet. What the fuck is going on around here? This is some bullshit. Price of bacon. I was in the supermarket yesterday. $10 for a dozen. $10 for a dozen of eggs. It's out of. The crazy thing is it was just sitting on the damn shelves. I don't think anyone's buying them. No,
they're gonna put it next. It's gonna be between the caviar and the champagne pretty soon. Like people just carry around an egg like they're wearing a Rolex watch, right? Flipping an egg.
Everyone busts out their calculators at $10 by 12 equals X amount per egg. And I'm like, this math don't make no sense. Everyone does the same thing. They look at the eggs and they're like, okay, too much.
Yeah. So we talked about leadership. We talked about the message. Is this the kind of action we need? Do we just need prices lowered on the economic front? Or Brock, do we get back to who's going to get us that multiracial, multicultural, um, under one big tent organization?
My issue is no one's really working for that.
Right,
You know, AOC, of
right,
course, can because she's a woman of color, but she's out with Bernie and they're doing the economic message and they're getting white crowds who are really mad about what's going on with their money,
right,
right? And now their livelihood has been effed with, and now they're riled up. Irving, I tell Mark all the time, no one gets angrier than white people, right? Because move to violence so much quicker because just so not used to so used to things working their way that there's almost a shock factor
Oh
that
yeah.
they're a part of the layoffs and that these things are impacting the white community and like the price of drugs going back up, all these things that are chipping away. And so Bernie's been saying this message for 40, 50 years, and it's finally coming around to him. But Mark, I don't think anyone in society, rarely do people discuss race. Certainly when white people are together, they don't discuss race. I don't think black and white people intermingle that much. Certainly in our ages, I think the younger generations do.
right,
And that maybe that's where the voice has to come from.
right.
Maybe it's going to have to be some biracial kid who's just like,
Yes,
is a melting pot of a whole bunch of different things and just shrugs his shoulders and goes, "That I'm America,"
right,
and let's move forward.
right.
Um, because I don't think anyone ever talks about it. That's why I was kind of happy when I saw this clip of J.B. Pritzker. He was speaking about LGBTQ and trans people, but he's a straight white man standing up for that community, right? So rarely do people talk about things that don't impact them or oh, in my family, and like, it doesn't have to impact you directly for you to care about it. Right and wrong is right and wrong.
Let
So I'm just waiting for the leader that's going to talk cross racially. I'm not seeing it yet. I don't know if either of
Well,
you guys are.
and we're going to wrap on this, and I want both of you guys to opine on it. But we're going to see somebody who's going to have to do that now that the Department of Education is under fire because the black community, brown communities are really going to feel it. And then a lot of white communities are going to feel it because of all those special programs that we talked about. And see, and don't forget, there are poor white people out here too that get those reduced price lunches and lunches in the summertime. And those programs are going to go away if they haven't already. So you're going to have to talk to, a cross section of people to get them fired up and pissed off. And that cross section of people is going to be coming at you for answers.
yeah.
And it's going to happen now because that the Department of Education is one thing that who gets the best education? Well-to-do white folks, right? Everybody else is left to fend for themselves.
Yeah.
So that's going to be an interesting battle coming our way. And I think it's going to happen over the next 30 days because you need action from Congress to shut down the Department of Education. He thinks he can do it with the stroke of a pen. He can't because, again, he doesn't know how government works. So, I mean, that's how I see it playing out. So, at some point, there's an issue that hits everybody, right? The pocketbook issue, because black folks are still sitting back saying, "Oh, see, now you, now you know what we've been talking about for all these years." Right? And white folks are saying, "Well, it wasn't supposed to happen to us."
Let me
Right?
throw
That's why you got 35,000 mostly white folk at these rallies. But, when we start talking about education and things that hurt our children, you're going to get a different kind of fight.
Let me throw out a question to both of you guys real quick. It could be usually it's the answers that are controversial. Maybe this question may be controversial, and I'm all right with it. Is having, brought to your point, is having a leader that represents everybody else that the Republican Party does not cover or represent, for example, is that a recipe for failure on the Democratic Party? Because we see that it did not bring us to victory last November. Does there need to be does the next leader of the Democratic Party need to be a leader for women, Black people, brown people, Asians, Latinos, LGBTQ, trans, and so on and so forth? That is one big ass tent. And the one thing that I know about the individuals in that tent, we all got different agendas.
Yes.
We may be minority by number, and that is our only common denominator. But after that, the things that Latinos are looking for and what takes them to the polls is very different than what Blacks are use in their agenda to take them to the polls versus Asians, Indians, obviously women, when you start talking about pro-choice and equal pay and so on and so forth. And I just throw that out there. Maybe you have
no, it's interesting you say it. It got me to thinking that that's why the Democrats have a harder time with messaging and need better leaders. Democratic presidents always have to be better campaigners and better because you're trying to herd cats.
The math.
The other side of the ledger, they're already in line. It doesn't even matter who they roll out because they're already, philosophically, they're already there. They just need any, quote, idiot, and they found one, right? They always find one. Any idiot can lead that party, right? Just be racist and be an old white man and talk about tax cuts, and you got everybody. They all fall in line, right? Not one person goes out of step. Right. The Democrats need a more dynamic leader, and they almost, Biden was almost the only one who wasn't that, but he'd been around for so long that people were comfortable with him. But the others, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, you need really dynamic people.
Right. I think that I agree with you. I think it's very difficult. I 100% agree with you, Brock. I think it's a tougher role to fill, the Democratic leader of that party versus the leader of the Republican Party, whomever that will be. And it's simply because you almost need multiple messaging if you are the leader of the Democratic Party versus the leader of the Republican.
I know. That's why I thought Harris Walsh was going to win, because they had the multiple messaging. But I feel like they watered Kamala down a little bit. But your question almost just depresses me in thinking about the answer, because then the answer is yes, America is so racist and so set in its ways. The next the leader of the left and Democratic Party is going to have to be a white man. And, because, we tried a black woman, it didn't work. We tried a white woman, it didn't work. We got to, it's definitely going to be a man, and it's got to be. And here we go. Gavin Newsom's name gets thrown back in. His hat is back in the ring. Buttigieg is gay. Is America ready for a gay man? Right?
Who would automatically be one of the best candidates.
Yeah.
Like he was before. He's one of the smartest, one of the most practical, one of the most deliberate, one of the most empathetic leaders that we have to offer in this country. And we would be afraid that we wouldn't be able to pull people, close enough to the center, to pull the lever for Mr. Buttigieg.
That's the depressing, thinking about the answer, it gets depressing because it limits the candidates. It limits the pool unnecessarily or artificially.
You need to be surgical about your messaging, right? And how do you craft that message that can encompass so many different people from so many different backgrounds and walks of life in different countries, east, west, north, south, and so on and so forth. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. I think you'll go ahead, Mark.
I would argue with you and say, the people are eating cats and dogs was a better message than I'll help you buy your first home. So I don't know. Do we just keep it simple, stupid? Or, do we try to, speak to the higher plane in our American society? I think we keep it simple.
But that's also getting to political and who wants to win an election in 3 years.
Right.
That's assuming that we're actually able to make it through the 3 years. So I actually feel like now that we're talking this through, or Mark, I'm going to ask for a little bit more time tonight. Is that maybe we were thinking about it a little wrong. Also, maybe there's the leaders and the message for now, and then there's going to be the leaders and message for the political message for a campaign. But right now, I feel like we need people who aren't careful about their language, aren't careful about what they say, aren't being calculated about what their next job is going to be, and are just swinging haymakers
I
Yep.
agree.
right now. And they're going to make some mistakes, but they're being aggressive and they're making mistakes of aggression and fight. And maybe they're fighting too hard, and who knows? Maybe they punch themselves out in the
Well,
fight now. But we don't want. I don't want anyone who's too worried about what they say and has a
no.
consultant behind them, like trying to massage their message. Because right now, in a bare knuckle brawl, it's a street fight.
Well,
Like,
this goes back to what I was saying about if Kamala decides to come out with messaging tomorrow. The
Right.
stuff that she talked about last summer, last fall, ain't gonna cut it. And I agree 100%. If it's gonna be Kamala or whomever, it has to be the bare knuckle. And it had the message has to be twofold. And I'm not talking about a message for multiple people under the umbrella of the Democratic Party. I'm talking about some messaging, for example, that AOC and Bernie is doing right now. Talking economy, talking economy. That goes to the heart, that goes to the stomach, that goes to the purse strings. Talk about economy, talk about economy. But also at the same time, with a lot of vigor and a hell of a lot of cursing, talk about the screw ups that the other side is doing on a daily basis and how those screw ups are negatively impacting your pocket. For
Well,
those of you that voted last November, I bet you didn't think that he was going to be firing your ass 60 days later, and that
right.
he was going to be taking away your pension, and he was going to be taking away your benefits, and so on and so forth, threatening of getting rid of Social Security, and so on and so forth. This is what they do. It was
Yes.
lined in
And
Project
here's
5 last year.
and here is why Brock's sense of urgency matters. We can stop the bleeding on April 1st, right, Brock? We talked about this last night. These 3 special elections, if we can flip these 3 seats, what do we got? 2 in Florida and 1. Oh, wow. There's one other one. The Gates seat. Oh, Arizona. Arizona, I believe, is the third. So if we get all our heavy hitters, the Tim Walzes, the Jasmine Crockett's, the Bernies, the AOCs, out to these districts on April 1st to rally the troops, right? And on the last day of March, coming into this election, that Monday, we go on a barnstorming tour to say, hey, are you sick and tired of this? All right, here's one way
one
to
thing you
stop
can do. Yeah.
it.
For now. Yeah.
Right,
Just
for now.
do something. Here's what we can do right now.
Something, right? And so that's why I wonder where Kamala is. That's where I wonder where, Mayor Pete is trying to basically reservoir himself and throttle himself when we need you on all cylinders
Right.
fighting the good fight to flip Congress, right?
Yeah.
That gives us the majority in Congress with those 3 seats.
Yeah, and they're uphill battles. They're hard ones, right? It's going
Right.
to take massive turnout, which you usually don't get for these special elections, right?
But
'Cause
remember, we're getting some
yeah, it could happen.
cooperation.
It's winnable. Anything's winnable right now. White people are so mad that anything is winnable right now
Right.
because they're either not going to come out and vote Republican or they may even flip over and vote against. I would guess they're probably just not going to show up. So I imagine the turnout on the MAGA side could be
Exactly.
really low.
Exactly.
Yep.
They've got no reason to come out, right? Because they're being hit everywhere, especially in Florida and Arizona. Look at the turnout for AOC and Bernie in Arizona.
Wow.
Like, who would have thought that in stark red, country?
Right.
And, those cities out there, they have a huge Latina population as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, think about these dynamics. Think about the dynamics in North Florida and Matty Gates district where people were not reporting to work and business owners were losing their livelihoods and the businesses that they built because their people were scared to come to
Yeah,
work.
a lot of veterans in that district too.
Absolutely. You got the Air
Hopefully
Force
they're
base down there.
pissed enough to
Canada.
stay home or maybe vote a certain way. I get it, Herb. I mean, it gets complex too because it's almost like we need a team of pit bulls that are just
Right.
firing at Trump every day, antagonizing him and letting the country know how he's fucking up. And then some other messengers are doing the unity thing that are trying to bring the tent together. I mean, the group together under the tent.
Think about how easy that would be to put together, right? We get Hakeem and Jasmine out, hitting the
Yeah,
urban area.
Jasmine is already captain of that team, right?
Oh, no doubt.
Tim Walz has kind of said, "I'll jump on that team. I'm
Yeah.
not going to. I might be thinking about the presidency, but I'm not going to calibrate my message. Like, I'm just going to shoot from
Yep.
the hip. So he just fires away and insults Trump. And, that's where you get
Yes.
into guys like Swalwell and maybe what we'll call like second tier guys who, are good antagonists in terms of, and Schiff who are willing to talk shit on Trump. They're not
Yep.
afraid that they're going to get death threats because they're just going to get him, right?
You
But they're
get Frank
willing to
Bloomberg.
fight
Yep.
against Trump. Bernie, of course, he'll say anything, right? He hasn't, which,
I
that's
mean,
what's great about Bernie.
we've got some stars if we would let them loose. We've
Yep.
got some.
Yeah.
Jamie Raskin, right? We've got some. Fred
It's on them, man.
Gutenberg.
It's on
I
them.
mean, we have some dynamic young talent in the party. We just have to let them go because this is a new day. This is a social media age, a lot, and we've talked about this. Brock and I just had this conversation last night. We talked about how social media is going to be where this is won, right? Why do you think Donald Trump and his ilk wanted to get rid of TikTok? Wanted to look at what the graphic Mark Cuban posted today on Blue Sky, which talked about the reverberation of the right wing, news conglomerate versus the blue. You have like 2 blue dots and 3,000 red, right? So they're buying these platforms so they can control the messaging.
Right.
Right, you can't go through Twitter without seeing some right wing nut job, tweeting some conspiracy theory. So we've got to let these young people do what they do. We got to let AOC come out as a leader and help her explain, hey, Bernie, you need to come over here and do this quick selfie, video with me, right? People need to see us before we go on stage right? Because that's the game now. The game has changed. And
Absolutely.
now some people don't even have cable in their TV. They
Right.
have Facebook,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? They got YouTube, they got TikTok, right? They can't afford it. So they're getting their news and information on their phone,
Yep.
right? And it's going to get worse as we go forward. So we've got to be able to reach those folks and get those folks. It's a new day, it's a new game. That's why Cambridge Analytica. Remember, are you guys old enough to remember Cambridge Analytica and all that nonsense
Yeah.
and all the money that was spent on those digital campaigns in 2016,
Yep.
right? And everything that they were doing to sway that election Trump's way. I still think it happened in 2024. I don't want to go all conspiracy on you, but you can't tell me he won fair and square.
Irving, before we hop, maybe this will be the last question, Mark. Curious, what are the 20 somethings engaged, or are they just trying to live their lives?
Mm.
No,
Mm.
these 20 somethings, the 20 somethings, again, things need to burn down, and from the ashes rise the phoenix, right? And so for the 20 somethings, now you're talking about the college age students, and you're seeing what's happening at some of these colleges already, right? Getting their funding pulled or threatening to get it pulled because
Programs
there's a
getting
transgender swimmer at the University of Pennsylvania. Take away $150 million from the federal grants. And
So is
so
that getting these kids pissed? Or like, are they mad or are they?
I believe it is. I mean, now you're talking about, some of the changes that Columbia University made so they don't get all their federal funding and so on and so forth, right? So I listen, the last thing I think college students want is see the government coming and having overarching, input on, what kind of departments can you have on campus and the kind of departments that you can't have on campus, even to the type of students, no transgender swimmers and so on and so forth. You can argue that they should belong or not belong, but the fact that you're going to threaten pulling federal funding if they do stay, I mean, it's just absolutely egregious. I'm always a believer in the youth. I want to continue believing in the youth. Any of those youth staying on the sidelines, it's going to be at their major, major disadvantage. I don't care if you're white or black, man, young woman, you got to get off the damn
Yeah, we
sidelines.
haven't seen campus protests. Maybe they've been intimidated by, the fact that, all the Columbia although that was a
But it's
But see, that one's hard to understand,
It's not
right?
time.
Especially for 20-year-olds.
Yeah. Bad shit needs to happen in order for the protests to start up.
Jump
And
off.
this is what I keep on talking about, right? Bad shit needs to happen. We're not at bad shit yet.
Not yet. 63 days. I
Yeah.
could list you 100 bad shit things.
No, not at the collegiate level. Not at the
The
collegiate
funny
level.
thing is, bad shit's happened to some old white guys in rural America. Like the farm lost their customers because of USAID, and now they lost their their cousin lost the federal job, and now they're talking about taking away their Medicaid. So maybe it got to the.
I both know, right? You know, you like you said before. There's no angrier person than an angry white person. But they have to get so angry, right? You had said this to me,
It's coming.
right? Where it was like, hey, we you know, it can't just be black folks that are upset to be out there talking. You said that you wanted to see white folks upset out there talking, and in order for that to happen, they need to get so mad. And they've gotten so mad because they've gotten so damn frustrated about something not going their damn way.
I know.
Right?
I think we are going to get white guys out there. It's not the white guys I wanted out there, but I think, you know, Rumsfeld, you go to war with the army you have. It's more people from the right in rural America, white, that is the most angry and will be the first ones out there, probably, most likely to be the most ardent white representatives of the first major protests that happened. I think we'll see, because there's also marches coming in. I think it's 11 days now.
Yeah, we'll see, man, because things are getting taken away from folks of all different walks of life, man. And then, you know, it's sad because I'm like, wow, you really just focusing on the like 0.1% of this country. It's just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah,
right? It's just mind-boggling to me.
And
all these folks that just voted for you and you don't give a damn about them.
Nope. And now they're starting to realize it because it's hitting them over the head.
Right.
Well, Hervé, always a pleasure to see you, my friend. Drop in anytime you feel like it.
Thank you, Mark.
Put it on your calendar. 1 month. 1 month. We're going to check back in and see.
We'll do it again. We'll talk about something else crazy. Right? Hopefully, we'll start to see that phoenix rise from.
We'll be looking for it.
I'm telling you.
Sounds good.
Keep your eye on the
All right, gentlemen. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
All right, Mark.
All right, Harvey. Thank you, Mark, as always.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.